hello everyone, and welcome to Morphin Meet the Interviews. Today, you may know him for Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, but he has also designed Imperial Assault. He's worked on that, Doom the board game, and of course, one of those great late night fillers, Bargain Quest. So without further ado, hello, Jonathan Ying.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you so much for being here with us today. So you are one of the rare people who actually gets to work on a property like you love. So what did it feel like to be able to actually work with a property that you grew up with and that has, been so exciting for you?
Oh man. Yep, it was a real treat, and I can't wait to see what else Power Rangers can is coming down the pipe. Like, felt fun trailblazing this one.
So Heroes of the Grid was great, and we are still in the process of doing that. And I believe we are even currently shipping the next expansion, which is the Rise of the Psycho Rangers. What was it like to work on that one?
I believe so. Yeah, that one was a real treat to work on. I think it's definitely the most ambitious big box we've yet done. Oh man, it is funny thinking about it though, because like my head is all about the stuff that is still like coming down the pipe and is still being in production. So like we wrapped up Psycho Rangers, months ago. So it's really funny when it like comes out. It's like, oh right, that was really cool, and now people get to see it, and I'm super excited.
So that's amazing, and that's fun, and that's what's happening right now. So let's backtrack a little bit, and I'd like to find out how the heck your first design out of the gate, you got to work with Star Wars property and work on Imperial Assault, because that's kind of an awesome thing, right?
But yeah, so I've told the story a couple of times in the past, but the broad strokes of it are that I used to work in animation. I like studied storyboarding and like writing in college, and then due to various events, I was looking for work in around 2012, 2013, and I saw Fantasy Flight Games had a job opening posted on the board, posted that someone shared on the board game subreddit, right? And I sort of, just decided to go for it, and it kind of went well enough. They had a really cool interview process, and eventually they brought me onto the team. They liked me enough that they set me down with some projects. And I think one of the first questions they asked me was like, what do you know about Star Wars? And I was like, listen, hold on. From there, I was sort of brought on almost as like a ringer, as like a new set of eyes for the Star Wars Imperial Assault system, which was evolved from the Descent Journeys in the Dark miniatures game, which I quite enjoyed. But as someone who was kind of more new to the company and more new to the system, and I was able to kind of bring a fresher set of eyes that basically allowed me to kind of be like, okay, what would I like this system to be from a more modern perspective? Like, what do I, as a new person, find approachable about this kind of miniatures game? And I really just ended up being dropped into the deep end on that project. And it certainly helped me out a lot. Like, I had a lot of really great mentors at Fantasy Flight, and I worked with them for several years. And eventually, I think a number of things, like I got kind of sick of the cold living in Minnesota where Fantasy Flight is based.
Yeah.
My partner was going to grad school. Like, we decided that it was a good time for me to try and kind of make it on my own. And so I left FFG and kind of took a gamble with Bargain Quest, which we released on Kickstarter. And that was sort of my first passion project. Like, this is all me. And that went really well. I worked with my sister, who's a wonderful illustrator, Victoria Ying.
Yep.
And that was a modestly successful Kickstarter that then got covered by Shut Up and Sit Down, which led to the second Kickstarter being wildly more successful. And that was very exciting, to the point where we kind of needed help getting it out, just because the sheer volume of orders wasn't something we were equipped to deal with.
Right.
Thankfully, by that point, I had been doing a couple of freelance design jobs, And I just moved to San Diego, where Renegade is based, and I kind of met with Scott, and we had started on Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. Like that was in production during all of this, which meant that partnership with Renegade kind of really seemed to make sense. So that was very exciting. And I sort of skipped over the part where Scott asked me over lunch, like, so what do you know about Power Rangers? And I was like, listen, hold on.
Wait a second. So you got to work on the two best properties, Star Wars and Power Rangers, your two biggest loves.
Like it, oh God, it has been, I feel immensely blessed to have gotten to work on two of my favorite franchises of all time.
Yeah.
Like, oh God.
Absolutely.
Good.
Awesome. So you got to work with Power Rangers, which is pretty cool. Now, myself, I was a little on the older side. So as I came up, Power Rangers were just coming in. So like I remember Mighty Morphin being a thing I would watch, but that was the only one I ever got involved with. Where did you kind of come into it? And like, what's your entry point into the whole Power Rangers universe?
I was like the exact right age for Power Rangers. I was, maybe even slightly too young, but it was the only thing, I was watching it when it was at like 7 a.m., like being shown. Who puts a show for kids on at 7 a.m.? Apparently, it seemed like a terrible time slot, but it was one that I was willing to wake up for as a kid, because it was just like really not seen anything like it, right? It's got superheroes and it's got robots and it's got giant monsters. Like it was just blew my tiny mind as a kid. And, that was basically what dominated our like play pretend times, all the way through, preschool, grade school, like the whole while. And yeah, I stuck with the series as like a diehard fan all the way up. I followed the ride all the way up through in space, kind of the end of the Zordon era. I fell out of it for a little bit when I like hit that point where it's, not cool, right? There was that time when it's like, oh, Power Rangers, that's not cool. I'm going to try and be cool and, listen to cool music and whatever. Like, and eventually I got old enough to be like, wait a minute, liking things that you like is cool.
Right.
Being ironically joyful about things is cool. And I kind of got back into the series and started, really enjoying it again later on. And yeah, I've kind of enjoyed catching up with the series. Like, every once in a while, I just kind of toss it on in the background and like, binge a season or two. It's really great to watch while doing art. I do some illustration. So yeah, it's been, so that is kind of my broad history with Power Rangers. I admit I had never really gone to the conventions though, right? Like,
okay.
I was kind of, I had the toys, I played the games, I watched the show, but I'd never really gotten really in touch with the community until this game. And until like we went to Ranger Stop with, or it was Power Morphicon, to demo the game. That was like my first Power Rangers convention. And I was like, oh God, what have I been missing out on? This is wonderful. The whole community has been absolutely lovely.
I can't wait.
I've been really enjoying kind of meeting the Power Rangers fandom now. It's great.
So what I find very interesting, right, is how old and how long Power Rangers has been around, right? So it's now gotten to a point where it is actually generational. So the people who grew up with it are indoctrinating their kids with it as well. So it's kind of amazing that it's kind of spanning these generations.
I mean, I think it is definitely really interesting that every kind of series of Power Rangers is its own contained thing. And that makes it really easy to jump on, because it's not like Marvel Comics or like Batman, where it's like, oh, there's hundreds of issues of background and lore. And like you get the basic premise, but if you try and jump in the middle of any number of, major like big two comic stories, or like even like trying to get into the MCU now, there's this huge backlog of media to go through. Whereas Power Rangers, like, oh, hey, a new Power Ranger series, it'll have references to the old ones, but you don't have to know them to have a good time, which is, great for kids who have, weren't around 20 years ago, but also, great for people who want to get into a new show and have a good time. I do think the generational aspect is really interesting and has kind of reared its head in Heroes of the Grid, because every time we go to a show, everyone asks like, hey, where's the season that was on when I was a kid, right? Like, it's, you got to do Wild Force, you got to do Dino Thunder, you got to do and we hear every person has a different series which we got to do, and I would love to do all of them, but it'll take some doing, but we're doing our best.
Sure,
we're doing our best.
Well, you're doing great. The only problem I have is that the box is so darn huge. Like, it showed up at my house, and it's 2 monster boxes. It's incredible. One of the things I find incredible, like you mentioned, is that there are so many different worlds, right? And these boxes are going to be so full of stuff.
I apologize to everyone's
yeah, there's just so much of it. So, when you started designing the game, did you build in the plans for expandability? Did you build in the systems to be able to handle more and more and more built onto it later as the systems develop, and adding in new shows and things like that came along later?
I mean, that was definitely something that me and Scott talked about from the very beginning, is the idea that like Power Rangers as a series aimed most of its content towards kids, right? With very mass market production values. And there's kind of this element of the series where my goal the entire time working on Heroes of the Grid is that I want it to feel like what Power Rangers felt like when I was a kid. Because there's a certain vibe that like Pudgy Pig is a cool monster, but if you look back and like that costume was not actually particularly convincing, right? But as a kid, he was like this kind of freaky, weird pig man with like the Trojan helmet, and he's like, it's terrifying. And so, going to the sculptors and going to the artists, oftentimes we would go to them and be like, okay, here's exactly what they looked like in the show. Don't be married to exactly this, right? Like, you don't have to make them proportioned so that a person can fit inside of it necessarily, right? And so we got to kind of, and Saban and Hasbro have both been really friendly to us, kind of taking these liberties and making them a little more extreme, a little more exaggerated, to match this idea of what the nostalgia felt like, right? And Dan Mora, meanwhile, had been doing the Go-Go Power Rangers comic series at the time when we were in development, and that had such a perfect vision for like what a Power Rangers story, like a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers story, would look like in the modern day. It was excellent. And so it has been, I'm really glad that this kind of thing has resonated with everyone, this like, slightly more mature, serious take on Power Rangers that is still, lighthearted and funny. Like, I got Dan Mora to draw Hyperforce Pink throwing a burrito at a monster. Like, it's still Power Rangers, and that's the thing that's really important. But like, Power Rangers can both be whimsical and lighthearted and cool, and intense and scary. Like, it's, oh God, I love Power Rangers. Sorry.
We know. It's a big thing that shows through all of your work, how much you actually love this thing. Like, it comes through. It absolutely comes through in what you've produced. So thank you for that.
I'm glad it comes through, because took a lot of time and heart.
So you've got this robust system that you're developing. How much was in the actual design process to build in that expandability we talked about earlier, to actually make the game be able to handle, all of the different genres, I guess, or the different shows and the different series, right? Like, how are you able to build all of that in to be able to make the game enjoyable, replayable, and fun for many years to come?
I mean, it was definitely a thought process early on, is that like, we knew that we wanted at least, from the kickoff, we wanted like the 6 core Mighty Morphin Rangers, and we want the option to be able to expand out into the later series, right? If the game, found an audience. And there's already this variety of monsters and things. So expandability was always a core idea in the game. And a lot of early designs, which honestly weren't bad, did not quite have the flexibility or the room to grow the way that the current design did. And I feel like immensely proud of the current design of Heroes of the Grid, like the combat decks and the enemy cards and how they're structured, that we've been able to kind of twist and play with the system in the ways that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly looked at a lot of models like, Magic the Gathering is definitely a huge inspiration. Like they've got 20 years of content and counting, and they keep coming up with new ways to twist the system. And so I did want to make sure that at its core, the basic mechanism of Heroes of the Grid of like, here's how, enemy resolution works, here's how player card, here's how attacking and damage works. Like those were nice and coherent and solid and have room to grow and be twisted and have interesting ideas sort of play with them. And like, I knew the system would be expandable. The sheer degree to which we've been able to come up with cool new ideas for Rangers and monsters is definitely more than like I had initially expected. Like I am impressed with what the system has handled even this far. And I can't wait for what's coming down the pipe too. Oh man.
Right. So when you think about these games and expandable games and, Magic, exactly like you said, is there any concern or do you have any worry about power creep in the upcoming releases?
So power creep is one of the most interesting concepts for a game like this. In cooperative games, power creep is kind of a weird animal because it's less impactful than in a game with a tournament scene, right? But it's still an issue because you don't want the game to become trivialized. You don't want choices to become too obvious. Like the core of good game design is choice. And with Power Rangers in particular, like, because the game is structured that you are a team and different Rangers can combine and synergize in different ways, you will inevitably become more powerful the more, different kinds of options become available, right? Having options is power. So the more content that is available, the more power players will have access to. But we kind of work really hard to set a nice solid baseline where every new Ranger team is tested against the base game's monsters as they're like, this is how we test them. Every new monster is tested using the base game's Rangers to make sure they're still relevant and that they're not, that is our baseline always. Like beyond testing all the other combinations and stuff, we always make sure that as a priority, like, Rita Repulsa will always be a threat, right? No matter what Ranger team you're playing, Rita Repulsa is scary, right? Like, and, like that has given us a nice benchmark as well as a number of different mechanical heuristics that, I've got that is similar to Magic has their, the Jedi curve of like mana in to power out. I have a similar formula of like, how much is a card worth? How much is an energy worth? How much, how many dice is this or that? Value do you get out of this or that? And that has been really helpful when designing Ranger kits as well as kind of balancing monsters.
But I think that that's like super important, right? That you're able to take these games and play them with the older stuff so that like that first box you bought isn't valueless in a few years, like that it's going to keep going.
Yeah, like that's the goal, right? Like you never want to be like, oh man, Jason Lee Scott, he's not very good.
What?
Like he's Jason. No, you gotta, like that would be unacceptable.
Exactly.
It would be like making Darth Vader underpowered in a Star Wars miniatures game. Who would ever do that?
Exactly.
Side look. No. But yeah, like that, that sort of thing is something that I have stumbled with in earlier game design and in playtesting, and that this is something I'm very cognizant of going forward with this kind of system. And we always want the base game Rangers to be relevant, but we also, want to make sure that new Rangers have interesting abilities that are exciting. My favorite thing is always that whenever we reveal a new Ranger ability, everyone's like, oh, that's so OP. And then they're not, they're fun. But they do something new, and that is exciting and sounds like it'll bust the game wide open when in fact it's just cool and new and exciting.
Awesome.
Or at least we hope so.
Right. And that's always the hope, right? That things stay relevant, current, flexible, fun, and that you can maybe mash up with your kids something that was extremely fun for them and extremely fun for you at the exact same time, right? Down the road. So what do you think was your favorite Ranger when you were growing up? Like, what was your favorite show and what was your favorite Ranger?
I mean, I've got a soft spot in my heart for Mighty Morphin always. I had a great time with Zeo. I think my personal favorite Power Ranger has always been Adam Park. He was, the second Mighty Morphin Black Ranger. He was Turbo Green, Zeo Green. He came back for the Once a Ranger special in Operation Overdrive, and that was immensely exciting for me personally to see like Adam's back and he's like the leader of a new Ranger team. It was, oh God, I geeked out. But for me, Adam Park has always been really important as like kind of this cool aspirational figure. Because as a kid, when growing up, most Asian characters kind of often fell into a few stereotypes that Adam Park did not, which was very cool. Like, and almost like it felt almost by accident, because usually like the Asian guys, the smart one or the kung fu one, but they're Power Rangers, so they all do martial arts. And Billy's on the team. We've already got a smart one. So Adam Park got to be a different, cool, fun character who I just really admired. And like, that was like one of my idols as a kid was, Adam Park. And like Johnny Yong Bosch, the actor, I followed his career. Like he's like doing amazing voice acting work right now. And I love him. It's great.
Yeah, I was surprised when I was sourcing our panel that there were so many of the Rangers are now doing voice work. It's a lot. And I was surprised and excited. I mean, it's good to see that, there's still ways to act and have fun and get in there, right? And still every now and then you'll hear a voice and go, wait a second, is that who I think it is?
Cranston got his start on Power Rangers.
Right? He was playing Zordon, correct?
No, he played Zordon in the new movie.
Okay.
He played like a bunch of monsters like Snizzard and like it's great. Like Twin Man. It's oh God.
See, so it's not too late. Not too late to start. So this kind of brings me to the point where I like to find out, like, what do you think if there are people out there who have amazing ideas, amazing thoughts, and perhaps they think that they have the chops to be a designer someday? What kind of advice would you give to them if they're starting out on this journey?
I think definitely make like designing games is a big part of doing it. And the thing about board game design that is amazing is that you can just do it at home, right? You don't need to like have a giant computer with a lot of hardware or like high production value stuff. You can do stuff with cards and paper and pens at home. And I think focusing on what you can make at home and making good games to completion, right? Like making the entire game is really helpful. Like I think, my first game design that I tried to do at home was way over elaborate. And it was like gigantic. It's like, oh man, what if it had all these things? And it was too big and it was just a mess. And I only really started to kind of hone my skills when I started trying to make, kind of smaller games, smaller systems, and establish the skill set of like writing a good rule book and playtesting well and iterating and creating a good experience. And those things then allowed me to carry forward those skills into giant, elaborate, miniatures heavy games that I love. So I think definitely like start small, iterate a lot, watch Game Maker's Toolkit on YouTube, read thoroughly. Like Extra Credits was really helpful for me as a designer. Like it's real good. Yeah. I think those are my quick thoughts.
Awesome. And, you kind of made me kind of want to circle back to the one question I have, and that is, how is playtesting been going? Because as of right now, obviously, we're still dealing with the COVID crisis, as it were, and this is a very physical game. So how's that?
It's been tough. We've been mostly doing playtesting via, like, we have a Discord group where we have a lot of testers just are playing at home. I've gotten really good at managing multiple Rangers at once for my own tests. Which you got to do, but we're still managing to get some good testing in. We are working on trying to build out, like, seeing if we can make like a hack together screen top version or something for testers.
Right.
But yeah, mostly we are kind of disseminating the content and letting the different remote testing groups handle it however they see fit.
Right.
We've got a couple of testers who are outside of the United States who have an easier time of it. In places where the situation is more under control.
Right. So it's It's one of those things, guys. We don't have this on Tabletopia or anything yet because it is such a tactile game that you lose all that on Tabletopia and things. So that's why it's not for demo. But do check it out. We do have live plays. We have the mastermind mode with Jonathan coming up on Sunday, I believe. And I
think the mastermind mode is on Saturday. On Sunday, I believe I'm doing a workshop where I'm going to be going really deep into my design process on making a Ranger kit. So you can look forward to that.
I think it's going to be great. Are you going to take any suggestions from the group, or are you going to poll people, see what they want?
We'll see. I've got a few things in mind, but we'll see how things shake out.
All right, that's pretty awesome. Thanks so much, sir. I think this is a good place to call it. I think this has been a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see those workshops when they come out.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Awesome. Have a good day, everyone. Enjoy the rest of Morphin Me.
Cheers.